and we can just answer them as we go. But for anyone who's joining us for the first time today, welcome. We're so happy to have you and excited for your questions and engaging with you. So for all of you high school girls, welcome. And funny story, Manisha and I actually went to elementary school together, so we go way back, but reconnected recently. So I actually didn't really know Manisha much in high school, so I'm curious, Manisha, what your high school experience was like, and what were you like in high school?
Right. So I think back in high school, I was pretty ordinary, I would say. Nothing too exciting back then. I was really exploring a lot of different paths, whether it be computer science or just like trying out a whole bunch of sports or getting, including myself in different clubs, participating in different types of events. That's what I was kind of trying to do back then, just because I didn't know what I was really interested in. I would say I was pretty much an introvert. I still kind of am, but I've definitely broken out of that shell in the past many years. What else?
Yeah. Did you take computer science in high school then?
Yeah, I stumbled upon that course in grade 10. So I did take a computer science class then, and then I really loved it. So I participated in like the computer programming club as well. There's only like 3 people, but it still counts.
More learning there. That's a cool opportunity. So I guess when you took the course, did you kind of have an idea that, like, you know, hey, this could be a path for me, or was it only after you took that course that you kind of saw that as an opportunity for you?
So when I took that course, I had no idea what programming was. Nothing to do with like computers and stuff. I did have a slight interest in tech, like gaming and stuff like that, even back then. So I was like, okay, this seems interesting, and I do like math and problem solving. So I decided to just jump into that course, and it was a lot of fun, like just programming different little applications, and we did do like a game dev kind of section or chapter. So just having that experience opened up a whole different world.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, I think I took a course, I think it was computer engineering in high school, and it was along those lines too. It was more, I think, robotics, and same thing, like I was able to build, you know, a small application online. But it's cool because you kind of get a taste of what it's like to be able to create things with a computer. So it's a nice taste of what could come from university or college. So
sure.
after that, were you set on software engineering?
So that was grade 10.
Yeah.
And then I definitely really loved the course. I was taking the other generic courses like physics, math, that kind of stuff. But there was definitely a special spot in my heart for computer science.
Yeah.
So I continued to take that in grade 11 as well. And then since we were an all-girls school, there wasn't enough demand to do the grade 12 course. So they had to cancel that. I was going to take it online, but then just things didn't work out.
Yeah.
So I ended up not taking the grade 12 computer science course. But I think I was still involved in that programming club.
Okay. Yeah.
So going off of that, I decided to pursue software engineering after that.
Yeah, I like that. It seems like a clear path, and I think it's cool that, I mean, with a lot of fields, like the extracurricular opportunities that are given in high school and even outside of your own high school, those are great opportunities to kind of get a feel for what things are like and what could be a good path. And sometimes often people's approach is, hey, I'll apply to various schools in various different degrees and then kind of see which school accepts me and where I can go with that. So for you, was it something similar to that, or did you apply to, you know, a bunch of schools for software engineering?
For me, it was pretty linear. Like I kind of knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
The only other type of program that I applied to was computer engineering, which was hardware based, right? I didn't really have any experience with that, and it was just something I applied to just in case, or like if it works out, sure. So I decided to do that. But a majority of the programs that I applied to were computer science or software engineering.
Okay.
And I didn't really have an idea of what the difference was between the two, because it wasn't really explained that well, even when we were in high school.
Yeah.
So I just did a mixture of those, and then I decided to pursue the software engineering program at the University of Ottawa.
Yes, and we can chat a bit more about that. I wanted to actually jump on that opportunity since you said it was something that you kind of weren't very clear about in high school. Maybe we can dive into the difference between computer engineering, software engineering, and computer science. Because I think that there's maybe some misconceptions about each of those, or not, a lack of clarity with the difference.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I guess I'll go through them one by one. Of course, I don't know everything about like the other programs, but I'll give you what I kind of know about. So the computer engineering course is more hardware based. A lot of robotics and physical components is what you'll have to work with. I did take some computer engineering courses in university, so we did have a lot of lab type of things where you would go into the lab, try to program like a circuit or try to make something work, right? Software, on the other hand, is very virtual, obviously, and abstract. It's very programming based, but the difference between software engineering and computer science is that software has more of that design aspect to it. So if you're designing these large scale systems, whether it's like a medical system where all the patients' data is in, or like a security system. So you want to make sure that this system is actually built really well. And there's a course called software architecture that you can take, and it's basically like architecture, but for software. So you're making sure that you have a good foundation for the system, and that everything that comes after that will be like secure and reliable. And then the last program, which is computer science, which I was debating between, is more theoretical. A lot of math is involved there, and things like algorithms, how to make sure like these programs run pretty fast and efficient. It is what you're kind of learning there. But a lot of the jobs that you can do with a software engineering degree and a computer science degree overlap a lot. So you don't have to worry too much about the job market after that. They share a similar job market.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that even in the tech space that I work in. A lot of our new hires come from both degrees and can ultimately end up in the same type of position. So, but still interesting to break those down, because when you're studying it does make a difference if you have more of an interest that aligns with one of those a little bit more. So that's interesting. And then now fast forward, you got accepted to University of Ottawa, and what made you decide on Ottawa? Because you're from just outside of Toronto. What made you decide on Ottawa and University of Ottawa?
Right. So I don't know if I should say this, but Ottawa was my last option. But it's not that I didn't get into anything else. It's that they started the mandatory co-op program. And I think my first choice was Waterloo because they have the best engineering department, but it's very competitive. So I didn't actually get into that one. But U Ottawa started the same program that Waterloo does. And the tech industry in Ottawa is pretty decent, I would say, compared to a lot of other parts of Ontario, at least. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll take the dive here. I really would like to get some experience under my belt while I'm at university. So I decided to just kind of go for it, even though it was pretty far from home.
Yeah. And I think that's a similar choice for a lot of people. Like if you get accepted and the co-op is kind of tacked on to the degree, it's kind of like a win-win, especially if the university offers assistance in helping you find co-op placement as well, because there are some universities, which is another kind of thing to look out for, some help more than others. So that's awesome. And fun fact, Manisha did not just do 3 co-op terms nor 4, she actually did 5 co-op terms and finished her degree in 4.5 years. So maybe we can kind of walk through that journey. What was your first co-op?
My first co-op. So this was after I finished 1 year of my software engineering degree, which is pretty generic. There's only like 2 programming courses, and the rest are kind of generic engineering courses. So the first co-op that I applied to was the University of Ottawa, their IT department. I didn't really do too much. This was quite a while ago. But I was mainly working with some of the other software developers on their kind of projects and just testing their software that they created, make sure everything works. It was a lot of quality assurance, I would say.
And before that co-op, were you involved in any kind of extracurriculars on campus that might have helped you get that job?
So like you said, we had a really great, what was it called? A co-op navigator kind of thing.
Gotcha.
It dumped all their job opportunities into there, and you just go apply. Once you have your resume ready, you can just go for it. So that was extremely helpful. I'm sure a lot of those other universities that have a good co-op placement system have something similar. So that was extremely helpful. I was involved in some extracurricular. I think I was in the Software Engineering Association. I just did some basic communications type of role, like emailing people, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, you're probably too busy working on your co-op placements to get involved in too much. So, and then after that term, what was your second co-op?
My second co-op was, I'm trying to remember.
or generally speaking, second or third.
I think I did one at JGR Optics.
Okay.
So it was a little bit more hardware based this time.
Okay.
They had a lot of hardware systems for like fiber optics and stuff. So they would be testing these types of cables and that kind of thing. But they would also need software to read those data values that come in from wires and stuff. So I think I just worked on an application that would assist with that.
Okay.
So just like reading stuff and showing it on a little UI.
That's cool. So you were a part of like building that UI essentially to present that data. Very cool. Very cool. And of all 5 co-op placements, which one kind of like thinking back on those experiences, which one stands out most to you? As far as experience goes.
I think experience-wise, probably my 5th one, like the last one.
And what was that?
That was Grass Valley. Yeah.
Cool. What did you do there?
They're all like jumbled in.
When you have 5, it's hard to keep track.
Yeah. That was Grass Valley in Montreal.
Okay. Very cool.
So that was also kind of hardware based, but a lot of the stuff that I did was software based. I think I was assisting on their nightly testing routine. So every time they get data and stuff, I would kind of dump that all into an Excel template that they can look at and just make sure everything looks right. And I remember doing a lot of work for that, and I felt like I was actually like involved, and they were giving me a lot of freedom. And I really like that feeling of freedom, like not being too micromanaged or anything. So that was really interesting. And I also learned like a whole new programming language during that time. So it was definitely an interesting experience.
Wow, that's cool. Like to walk out and say that you learned a new programming language in one co-op term is huge, because I know like when we work with developers, some of them it takes years, right, to learn a language or two. And now Manisha's a full stack developer, so that's pretty cool. And I just think co-op is such a cool opportunity to, even so you know you can be in the same field but get so many different opportunities to learn new things from different companies. And when you factor in, you know, how big is your team or how big is the company? And like you said, some roles were more hardware focused, others were software focused. Some you're really connected with what you're actually building, and you can see, hey, you know, the code that I am programming every single day, I can see that outcome in what I'm building. So I think that it's such a cool opportunity for students, especially when you're considering universities, to consider those co-op programs. So that's really cool. And so no one knows this, but Manisha is actually, so she has a YouTube channel and she has done some game development on the side, and she's actually built her own game, which is in the Google Play or the Android store, which I'll share a link because it would be kind of cool for you all to check it out. So maybe talk a bit more about when you kind of got into game development, just as kind of like a side hobby.
Okay, actually, like I said, we kind of did the game development chapter back in high school. It was like, I don't know if it was part of the curriculum or my computer science teacher just added in there just to get us like a little bit more pumped up. But that was the first time I actually did some game development. There's this program called Scratch. I think she introduced us to that first. It's very like drag and drop kind of logic. Okay. And you can create like little animations or a tiny game on that website. And it's created by MIT. So I did a little bit of that, and then she introduced us to a game engine that we could actually use. So I think I did like my final project for computer science in that game engine. And that was kind of what kicked off my hobby. I just really loved game development so much, and the fact that I wanted to pursue software engineering actually came from that. But I knew that game dev might not be the best field to, or the most realistic field to pursue. So I'm like, okay, I'll go for something more generic, software engineering. Yeah. So it's something that's always like lingered and followed me. And then that was very on and off. And then back in university, I joined this club. It was a game development club. And when I went there, some people were like, okay, we'll give you a crash course in Unity, which is like the most popular game engine. Yeah. And I like picked it up really fast. So I started learning that, and I made a game with my sister called Rocket Pig, which is not the one on the Play Store right now, but that was a remake of the old one.
Okay. And is your sister also in software development?
No, she is in architecture. But she likes doing art and graphic design.
Ah, okay. So you've got like a nice little sidekick for any kind of games you want to work on in the future. That's awesome. And so right now you're a software engineer at CEM benchmarking. So maybe we can talk a bit more about the experience there and how you ended up getting that job out of school.
So I've been at CEM for about 2 years now, I think. I've definitely had so much freedom there and like so many interesting projects to work on. So I've definitely liked that a lot. It's in the finance industry, which I never thought I would actually be in because I don't have too much of like, when I just graduated, I wasn't still sure, even though I had my co-ops, I wasn't really sure what field I wanted to go into because there's so many. Like software pretty much touches every field that you know. So I'm like, okay, I'll just apply to pretty much anything. I kind of knew what I didn't like. I think that's what my co-ops helped me with. So I just applied and interviewed at multiple places, and then I got this one.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the little culture and the small company, which is really nice. So I've just been doing a lot there.
How big is the team there?
So our engineering team is, I think, 6 people, and the company is about 40.
Yeah. And there's something so nice about small companies like that, because especially when you're building things, like, you're really like directly involved in what you're building, and you can see the input and output, which is really cool. You often have a lot of autonomy in your role, and like you said, like freedom, which is nice. You know, your role isn't so narrow, and you actually get to kind of experience a lot of things. So like, just diving into that role specifically, day to day, kind of what are you a part of on the engineering or the development team there?
So of course my day-to-day has changed in this past year, working from home.
Yeah.
My day-to-day usually consists of just taking on what kind of tasks I have left on the project. So obviously there's a lot of different components of the project, but I try to focus on like what needs to be done, what I can show to some of the analysts on our team, because the people who use it are usually our clients or the analysts in our company.
Yeah.
So in that way, I get to work on a lot of UI kind of things and user experience, which I really love. Just making sure that the user can use the software in like a pleasant way. And just making sure it's convenient for everyone. So I really like that kind of thing. I also work on the back end, which is making sure that all the data gets saved properly, everything is in the right spot, that kind of thing. But like you said, day-to-day wise, I try to communicate with my team members when I can, and with my supervisor. And even just like having insight from the analysts is kind of refreshing as well, not always being involved in your engineering team.
Yeah, and I think that's also kind of another thing, touching on the small team, like, you're able to actually work with other departments. Like, same thing with my company, we're less than 10, but I get to work directly with, you know, our development engineering team. I get to work closely with our CEO, closely with sales, and so it's cool because you get a lot of exposure to all of the moving parts of a company or a business. So that's pretty exciting. And what's your favorite part about your job?
I think my favorite part is just working on something new every day and just problem solving. Like, every day I have something new to tackle, or a new bug to go find and investigate. Like, it kind of feels like you're a detective sometimes. Like, trying to find this bug, and it's nowhere to be found. But there's just something interesting every day that's happening. So I really like that. And just being in the office was such a great time as well. I had really great coworkers, and we did a lot of things after work, which was always nice. So I kind of miss that aspect, but job-wise, there's always something interesting as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And when you think about kind of like the most challenging parts about either your job or the industry, what would you say about that?
Like the industry itself?
Yeah, industry or your specific job. Like, you know, being in software engineering, or, you know, what's the hardest part about your work?
I think the hardest part might be that tech is evolving so quickly. Like, you have to stay on top of things sometimes, in terms of just programming languages or just frameworks, that kind of thing, or just seeing what your competitors are like company-wise. I think I'm using like one of the frameworks that Facebook made, React, for the software that I'm making right now. But a couple years ago, there was something else that was popular. And so we moved on from that to this now. And then I'm sure in a couple years, it's going to be even different. Like, those kind of things you got to stay on top of. So I think that might be the trickiest thing to be a part of.
which is
but
definitely...
it's also satisfying
Mm-hmm.
because you're always learning.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's kind of fun because it almost introduces new challenges all the time. And I see that in our work as well. Like, we constantly have to support new languages, but there's also new opportunities too. So, like, for me, I'm in the security space, and we have a security scanner for developers, and so now we're looking at, what new languages can we support, and there's like a language specifically built for blockchain, for example, and how can we offer security support for that specific language. So it's cool that the landscape is always changing because it kind of offers new opportunities. So yes, and someone is mentioning, new tech makes sure you never get bored. Yeah. And yeah, that's awesome. And so one other question before we have 3 minutes left, so we'll wrap up shortly, but I wanted to ask for the girls in the audience, one of the things, and I can definitely relate to this, thinking back to my high school self, looking at possible career paths and where you can turn to for mentorship, or maybe it's extracurriculars online. For anyone who's looking to get involved in game development or software engineering, are there any places you might kind of recommend that they could turn to for some help or experience?
Mm-hmm. Right. Oh, that's kind of a hard one now that I think about it, because I'm thinking back to my high school days, and there weren't that many things that I could turn to.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just like attending things like this, or just reaching out to individuals, maybe on even LinkedIn. I see like some of my friends, they're in university, but they're reaching out to people in other industries or who are established professionals, right? Just going on LinkedIn, maybe just private messaging someone. Yeah, might be a good idea.
Yeah, and I've actually added your email and LinkedIn in the YouTube chat as well. So if anyone wants to reach out as well, Manisha is a great resource for any kind of questions in the field.
For sure.
But I would definitely agree with that. Like, sometimes you almost have to put in the work to find, what clubs exist, or programming in your area or in your high school that might help you explore those fields. So before we wrap up, one of my favorite questions to ask, if you were to give one bit of advice to high school Manisha, for the girls in the audience, what would you tell her?
Yeah, that's always a hard one, because I like to live without regrets.
Yeah.
For the most part. But then I also think about it, and I'm like, maybe the people who were around me kind of guided me in the right path for the most part. I'm always thankful for that. I think I was actually discussing this with my friends, and we're like, even though things up to this point, like up to high school, were quite linear, you're going to start getting a lot of freedom in your choices, and those choices can kind of define like the path that you're going to take from now on. And it might not always be the perfect path, right? So just to make sure like the choices you make have a lot of thought behind them. And also understanding that even though you're making this decision now, it's not too late to change it in a little while. And especially because your hobbies and interests and passions are changing all the time. Don't be afraid to like take a step into another direction, even though you've already taken that initial step into university or something. So I think that kind of thing would be nice.
Yes, that is like you took the thoughts out of my head and verbalized it. So thank you. I absolutely love that response, and that's something that I preach all the time, especially in university, working with students who kind of struggled in school and struggled to figure out their path. I think there's always so much pressure in figuring out what's the one thing that's meant for you, but really we're allowed to have so many different hobbies and passions and explore all of those things, and age is truly just a number. Like I know people in their 50s who are changing their career paths and going back to school. Like all of that is totally allowed, and so I'd love to echo that. That is an awesome bit of advice. And thank you so much for your time and insights. Great advice for our teens. That's awesome. All right. Well, I'll leave some room here for some questions, and if we don't have any questions, then we'll wrap up. And I did leave Manisha's email and LinkedIn there, so if you'd like to reach out and ask some questions, feel free to do so. She's an awesome resource, and same with myself. So we can wrap up there. And next week we have Laura, who is a mechanic. So tune in again at 6 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday next week, and we'll dive into what a career looks like as a mechanic. All right. Well, thank you so much, Manisha. That was so much fun and great advice and insights. So